During the funeral, a raven perched on the girl's coffin. Then something unbelievable happened. Hello friend. If you enjoy this story, please subscribe and like the video for more amazing stories.
Emma was a beautiful young girl who grew up in a happy and loving home. One day her father gave her an unusual gift, a small raven chick. By raising it, Emma would learn responsibility and how to care for something. Unfortunately, one day she unexpectedly died because of unknown reasons. During her funeral, the raven perched on her coffin, and that's when something unbelievable and miraculous happened. Emma might have only been 6 years old, but she was strong, beautiful, and independent. She loved to spend time in the garden looking at the plants and insects that played on them. She would run and jump and play amongst the trees, climbing them and scraping her knees and tearing her clothes. None of that mattered to her as long as she was having fun. She also enjoyed watching the fish swim in the streams and the birds fly overhead. Living in a small village in Cornwall in the UK, life was slow and quiet. Emma's mother stayed at home to look after the house and her child, and her father was a sailor who would often spend weeks or maybe even months away at sea. Emma would miss him dearly when he went away, but she was always excited for when he finally returned. Not only did she get to spend some time with her father, but she also loved the strange, weird, and wonderful gifts that he would bring her. Over the past few years he had brought her shells from a Caribbean beach, exotic sculptures from some far-flung Middle Eastern country, and books and toys from across Europe and America. She loved all of her gifts and enjoyed showing them off to her friends as she regaled them with stories about how her father would sail the seas and travel the world. Emma waited eagerly at the garden gate, waiting for her father to walk down the street. He had been away for 2 months this time, and he was due home at any moment. All of a sudden she saw him slowly walking down the street. Emma yelled with joy and ran towards him, throwing herself into his arms. She hugged him tightly and planted a big kiss on his cheek, but she noticed something. There was no gift. He would usually hand a gift-wrapped item to her straight away, but there was none to be seen. That's when he knelt down and placed something in her hand. She jumped a little as she felt a twitch in her palm and looked down to see a tiny baby bird. Her father told her that it was a small raven no older than a week or 2. He asked her to protect and look after it as if it were a real human baby. Emma was confused, but her face lit up when she realized the big responsibility she had on her shoulders. Over the next few weeks, Emma spent all of her time with the raven. She fed it, gave it water to drink, and even taught it a few tricks. Ravens are very clever birds, and has quickly picked up what the little girl was trying to teach it. The chick also started to grow, and over the weeks it learned how to fly. Emma would take it outside and watch it roam in the sky with adoration. It could easily fly away and never return, but it always found its way back to Emma. It was clear that the girl and the bird had quite a strong connection. But one day tragedy struck. While out in the garden laying under the big tree, Emma suddenly stopped breathing and clutched at her throat. The raven started loudly squawking, and within minutes Emma's parents came to the window to see what all the fuss was about. Seeing their daughter writhing around on the ground, they ran outside and scooped her up. Paying the raven no mind, they bundled the poor girl into the car and rushed her to the nearby hospital. The raven sat in the tree and watched the car disappear down the street before swooping in through an open window and perching itself on Emma's bed. Arriving at the hospital, doctors quickly started to check Emma's lungs. A girl so young and healthy shouldn't have any breathing issues, so it was important that they did scans on her lungs to make sure there were no issues and figure out what the problem was. It was also important to start her breathing again, as a lack of oxygen could cause some serious and irreparable damage. All the while her parents watched on with tears in their eyes. Despite the doctor's best efforts, unfortunately Emma was declared dead. When they called the time of death, outside the window of a hospital room was the raven. He kept pecking at the glass and loudly squawking, but the staff kept chewing it away. A hospital was no place for a bird like that. It could not be allowed in, even if it was a pet, as Emma's distraught parents drove home. The raven pecked at their car as well, again making a lot of noise, too stricken by grief. They ignored it. Once they arrived home and began making funeral preparations, the raven kept trying to get their attention, but they had no time for it. The day of Emma's funeral came soon. Her parents and family and friends all wept as they mourned the little girl laying still in her small coffin. The lid was open to allow people to say their goodbyes. She looked so frail and innocent in her coffin, as if she was some kind of precious porcelain doll. No one could quite believe that she was gone, and the grief in the room was palpable. Many people cried as they walked past Emma, stroking her face and kissing her cheek. But there was one attendant at the funeral that many people had not expected to see. The raven was sitting in a nearby tree watching over the proceedings. Every now and then he would fly up and circle the gathered people, making a loud cawing noise. Emma's parents held their breath as it finally swooped down and perched on the coffin, curiously looking at his friend's body. Suddenly the bird started to make a strange, buzzing, cooing noise as if it was asking a question. It hopped to and fro from the lid to the side of the coffin and then back again. After a few minutes the bird started pecking at Emma's body as if it was trying to wake her up. Her parents were moved to see such a sight, and while they recognized that the raven must have been feeling his own form of grief, they knew it couldn't stay there pecking at the girl. They tried shouting at it, but it wouldn't budge and even started pecking at her mouth. That behavior looked disgraceful to the family but was hiding a secret motive everybody was about to discover. As the father approached the open casket, he flailed his arms in the air to shoot the bird. It flapped and squawked but reluctantly took off and flew up to a nearby tree, looking down intently. All eyes followed the raven as he made the short journey, but as they all focused back on the coffin they froze. Emma was sitting up. On her lap was a walnut-sized kind of egg, one that had come from an insect and grown and multiplied. It had become lodged in her throat after falling out of the tree that she had been laying under in the garden. When she had been rushed to the hospital, the doctors had assumed the issue was with her lungs, so they had only checked her with an X-ray to the chest that had revealed nothing. What they hadn't checked was Emma's throat. The lack of oxygen had sent her into a coma, and she was wrongly pronounced dead despite still being able to take slow and shallow breaths. Emma looked at her mother and father, who threw themselves at her, hugging her and kissing her. Their daughter was alive. Shocked, they realized that the raven had known it all along. It had tried to communicate that message to Emma's parents many times, but they had not understood, and the bird pecking at Emma's face and mouth was its way of trying to remove the blockage itself. Thankfully, by doing so, the bird had just enough time to save Emma's life.
What do you think about this story? Thank you for watching this video, and if you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to like and subscribe for more.